In the constantly changing world of fundability, the big question is this: how are entrepreneurs and real estate investors like us, ones who want to grow our businesses and who are tired of paying for really expensive alternative lending, how do we tap into the most inexpensive money available and do it without the hassle of typical borrowing? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. Welcome to the Get Fundable podcast with your host, Merrill Chandler.
All right, everybody, we are back. Tom Hazzard, welcome back. You have some more information from the last SIC code, SBA/F.
SBA,
SBA,
PPP, yeah,
and everything that's going on with the lack of fundability of certain codes. So catch us up. Will you go back a little bit and cover just the highlights for those who haven't, who didn't get to hear that first one, and then let's hear what's going on now.
Okay, Merrill, thanks so much for having me back. It's fun to be here. Always great to be with Merrill live on Facebook.
We have so much fun
on
this.
We do.
Show.
We have a blast. So a quick little recap. You definitely should go back and listen to that other episode if you haven't heard it of Get Fundable podcast where we talked about the SEC codes. But the Reader's Digest version of that is that. So in mid-March, I got a call from QuickBooks Capital because I'm the owner of the business, and we had for two previous QuickBooks Capital loans, working capital loans, in the previous year, 6-month loan, get some capital, pay it off, and we paid perfectly, no problems. Well, they called me and because they knew the second one was about to be paid off within days, and they said, by the way, you can, as soon as that's paid off, you can go apply for another one. Is they're in the business of lending money. That's how they make money.
This is key, guys. They called him to set up for the next loan because it was flawless execution of two previous loans.
Right. And I said, okay, sounds good. I was thinking we would do that anyway. And it was, a good thing for us. Well, to keep in mind, this is just before everything gets shut down. This is before the coronavirus became, we all knew about it, but things really hadn't shut down yet. Well, in about the week of time that passed between they called me and invited me to apply, and then I actually applied, I was denied. And I was like, that's funny. I wonder what's going on here. And when I called them, the reason it said was, we don't lend to your type of business. I'm like, really?
And by the way, in my boot camp, I have a whole little section on the SIC code introducing where I circled that, where they can't deny you for sex, religion, age, or whatever, but they can deny you because of the type of business that you're in, right?
Well, and it was puzzling to me because they'd lended to us twice within the last year. It's like, well, we were the same company we were then, and why aren't you lending to us? Well, so I dug deeper, more because I was, puzzled by this, and of course, being a student of Merrill's, with, you need to know what you don't know. You've got to know the rules, or else the system is rigged against you. All this good stuff. So I dig deeper. I call into QuickBooks Capital, and I work my way up eventually to a very high level manager in QuickBooks Capital. And I talked to him. He gave me his email, and I actually got his direct dial number. And so he said to me, well, it's because of your SIC code. And what he told me is when Congress in a hurry passed the first PPP, what is it? The CARES Act, I think.
Yeah, the CARES Act.
With the PPP loan paycheck protection program, that they in advance of that being passed, the FDIC knew it was coming, and because QuickBooks Capital, among most lenders in the country, are FDIC insured, they made 78% or 73%, I forget, of all SIC codes unfundable. And no lending institution is allowed to lend to any of them.
And said no to any
overnight.
And remember, the rationale that we talked about last time, the rationale was because they want to, several reasons, and we're just connecting the dots because, we weren't at the table at the FDIC, but I'm telling you, I know, it's they wanted to keep the pipelines open and the books open for all the lenders, because if they're they want lenders to be able to push out this PPP loans, and like Wells Fargo, they had a low asset cap, so they couldn't loan as much unless you stopped lending to all the actual real commercial loans. You have to stop the commercial loans to make way for this behemoth that was coming down the pipe called PPP, right?
Right. And so that's what we learned. And I said, well, first of all, the big issue with us is our SEC code was wrong. Our SEC code was incorrect. And then that illuminated to us, we needed to get that fixed. And so my thinking at the time was, all right, I need to get the SEC code changed. And then I'll be able to get a conventional loan, because I'll be in that, 20 some odd % that they can lend to me. And QuickBooks Capital, they admitted they want to lend to me. They're in the business of lending money. They don't like it any more than I did that the SEC codes couldn't be lended to. So I went on that path for a few weeks, and I did not apply for a PPP loan in the first round of the 350 some odd billion in the CARES Act. Okay. I didn't do that. I kept playing this out for a few weeks. Let's get the SEC code fixed. Well, they, even at QuickBooks Capital, were helping. They said, actually, so we've identified the proper SEC code for you is this. And they told me, but unfortunately, we're still not going to be able to lend to you right now.
We're still not going to lend to you because they switched them back off after days open, right?
Yeah. They were switched off. So here's the thing. So weeks pass, and I'm just keeping in touch with the people at QuickBooks Capital, which I have to say has been a great experience working with them. And, I finally, I had the direct dial number, not cell phone number, but direct dial number at QuickBooks Capital for this manager in QuickBooks Capital, who seemed to be very high level. I mean, he was in meetings where they're dealing with PPP and they're learning about things. This is all new and all that. And it was on Friday, I could tell you the date. It was on Friday, April 24th, that I had a call with him. And he says, you qualify for PPP. It's like, yeah, I know, but my business is not one of these ones that's really desperate and suffering.
I'm not in hospitality. I'm not a bar, even though my kitchen looks like, oh no, we're talking about me now, not yours.
But we're actually doing well. And I felt like I shouldn't do the PPP. But what he made clear to me is, he said, look, it looks like the FDIC is going to continue to make these SIC codes unfundable as long as the second round of PPP is going on. And it won't be for a few weeks after that before you could get a conventional working capital loan. So he said,
that is what, when you told me that is where I did the math, saying they have to keep the pipeline open, because remember, the first round of 49 billion were the FDIC and the Fed credit line was not set up yet. And so every lender was literally filling up their asset and hitting their caps before they could sell those loans back to the Fed, right? That they were literally tapping out. So to help the process, apparently they're shutting down the freeway called, the funding mechanism, leaving it only open to the PPP, right? It's martial law for funding.
It's been an amazing experience, because I learned so many things. There's about the underwriting process, about the information you have to communicate to them to apply, and this is all important things we need to share today. So he convinced me. He's like, Tom, your business qualifies for PPP. You're not going to be able to get any other capital right now. You should probably do this for your business. And he didn't need me to do it. I mean, QuickBooks Capital is going to lend all the money they possibly can. So this is the first thing I learned. He said, QuickBooks Capital, now this is when the second 250 billion had been passed by Congress, the second wave of PPP. He told me that QuickBooks Capital has been allocated 2 billion of that. So we have 2 billion to lend.
That's like just barely under a full percentage point of the entire amount was given to QuickBooks Capital, because it's kind of an equalizer, right? Tons and tons of small businesses use QuickBooks Capital, and we'll get here in a minute. And the access to your books makes it easy for future. We'll get into that in a minute, but
my gosh,
so much easier.
I learned so much about this. So I apply, because here's the thing. I want to make this clear. Our company uses Intuit QuickBooks to keep our books. It's electronic, it's online, and we keep it up to date and reconciled on a monthly basis. Now, for any of you business owners out there, if you're not doing that, that is an absolute
change.
Must. Absolute must. And you'll understand why you want to do that. So because our books are kept in QuickBooks system, and QuickBooks Capital is a part of that company, they're all connected, they're sharing all the same data, they were able to go into all of our books and see how much payroll we had in the last 3 months, how much rent we paid, how much utilities we paid, all the things that qualify with this PPP program.
Oh, hold it, Tom. What's that called? Automatic underwriting, matching data points. That's weird. That is so weird that automatic underwriting speeds, and they trust the data 100-fold more than any of the forms or spreadsheets or whatever else you're sending them.
And so you are right, Merrill, and they have all our data. We've been doing business with them for years. Since the beginning of this corporation we started, it's been on QuickBooks. It's also connected with our bank accounts. I mean, they know everything about us financially, and because they know everything about us financially, and we're people of integrity, we're not doing things we're not supposed to do, right? That they've got all the information. And so it made the application process a breeze, literally 5 minutes on the QuickBooks Capital tab in your QuickBooks account. And, but they also, so they did all the calculations. I guess basically you take all those expenses and they average them over 3 months, multiply that by 2.5, and that's the amount of money you qualify for with PPP.
And to update everybody, in case, because they haven't run out of money yet. I don't know what the pace is, but just know that it's insurance, the company insurance, it is payroll, it is at least lease, and your lease or rent that you're paying on a traditional a building or space, times 2.5. Like, they want a full 2.5 months to get through the COVID peaking right before it planes out.
Right. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to apply. I'm not going to shut myself off to capital. I mean, I'm in business too. I need,
especially when it's a grant.
Well, because you really, and now having gone through it, it's really not that hard to, make it forgivable. And even if it weren't forgivable, it's 1% interest. Tell me
Correct.
Who you're going to get a loan from for 1%.
Prime plus 0.75.
Yeah. So okay. So I applied, and it was a quick process. Literally, they had all the information. Basically, I just had to confirm my identity, confirm the company's EIN. Put your bank account information in there where the proceeds are going to go to, your routing number and account number, and apply. And as soon as I applied, because this manager for QuickBooks Capital was on the phone with me as I'm doing it, he said, "Here, hold on, let me check." He's typing on his keyboard. He goes into the back end of the system. He says, "Yep, your application's in." And he says to me, "You're set. As long as, the SBA doesn't have a reason to refuse you, then you're approved for the loan."
You've checked all the boxes.
How do you know that already? And he says, "Well, we just know because we have all the data and you qualify. It's all the system knows. It's the software." And this was interesting. He told me that your money, now that you've applied, your money has been taken away from our $2 billion allocation. So it's reserved.
Hey guys, I want us to pay attention to the words that are coming out of Tom's mouth. What we're getting is a human being confirming the process of automatic underwriting, right? We're getting a human literally watching Tom's data points get measured up against the criteria that's been set up by the FDIC and the feds, and literally say, "Oh, check, 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 check." Remember, in the boot camp, everywhere I talk about check, 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 green light, green light, green light, approved. That's exactly this process. We just happen to have human confirmation of how it works. So well done, Tom.
Thank you, Merrill. But I got to tell you, there's more to the story, and I know you geek out on these details and things, and I do too, and I know a lot of your listeners probably do, because there's more to the story. It's really cool. So I really somehow developed a really good rapport with this manager at QuickBooks Capital, to the point where he's like, you're one of 4 companies that I'm hyper being aware of, and your QuickBooks account is in a tab on my browser and I'm watching it, type of thing. And he gave me his cell phone number. I've got it in my phone, not just his direct dial number that's a VoIP line that gets forwarded to him when you call. No, I've got his cell phone number. And he said, I'm going to keep in touch with you over the weekend. Remember, I told you this is Friday, April 24th, right? So I've got Saturday and Sunday. So he told me the other interesting stuff is that all of the data from loans that QuickBooks Capital has had people apply through them, and they've been approved through automatic underwriting, were starting to be transmitted to the SBA on Monday morning, the 27th of April at 7:30 in the morning Eastern time. And he says that's when it goes in. And so I also learned some other interesting stuff, is that they worked in conjunction with a bank in New Jersey called Cross River Bank, which I was like, well, why
the SBA does, or
no, QuickBooks Capital
okay.
decided
so they're
to
the FD, they're the backstop for the because you have to have a depository institution. For all fintechs have a depository institution, right?
So they partnered up or aligned themselves with joint, I don't know what you call it, but they had developed a relationship with Cross River Bank in New Jersey, specifically because of a little known electronic system called ETRAN, ETRAN, which is the electronic system the SBA uses to transmit loan information, loan data, and then for the SBA to transmit back approvals or denials. And it is like it's a pipeline. It's a conduit into the SBA, a mechanism of transmitting all this stuff. And so they worked with Cross River Bank because they had a particularly robust infrastructure for doing that. And
a big pipeline instead of a little one.
The big pipeline, right. And you're not like pushing paper, to get loans for this. Is all electronic data.
Okay, so I want to tell you guys to compare and contrast, right? We always talk about manual versus automatic underwriting. So I have clients who send emails to me, guys, that are saying, yeah, I'm still waiting for my PPP. And the email from Wells Fargo, while it was still, the second half was being approved, said, we're waiting, you're in line, we're waiting, you're in line. Another email they sent in said, you have the opportunity, we're now processing new loans. And then curiously said, we have mobilized hundreds of team members to ensure that we get you through this process. And I'm sitting here going, data point in QuickBooks on a tab in the application, right? Versus mobilizing hundreds of employees. What, $20 an hour, $30, $50 an hour to mobilize hundreds of employees? Guys, game over. And here's the thing: while in commercial lending, Wells Fargo is a superstar when it comes to automatic underwriting, but it's vertically integrated with systems that are not what we're talking about here, right? It isn't pivot in seconds and be able to add some fields on your website, fill in those apps, and off to the races we go. So this is a perfect compare and contrast of what's going on out there.
Well, and one of the things I was really impressed to learn about QuickBooks Capital. Now, look, I'm a customer of theirs. I'm not being paid to push them. I'm just really impressed by them.
So am I. And yet this is just amazing. Continue.
Well, but the thing about the PPP is, here's a law that was passed by Congress in a rush the first time, right? There were no systems in place to process this kind of loan. There are all new rules. So that, and what I learned is there were some differences that happened from the first round of 350 billion roughly to the second round of 250 billion. And the thing is, QuickBooks Capital, they had to invent, reprogram certain things in the process on their website and how it happens. Well, so interestingly, on Saturday, the 25th, I get a call from QuickBooks Capital, not from my inside contact, but I got a call saying, hey, the SBA is now requiring some additional information on your application in order for it to be processed properly. You need to go log back into your QuickBooks account, go to the Capital tab, and provide this other information. I said, okay, I'll go do that. So I got that call before it was possible for me to go in and do anything, because they hadn't programmed it yet. They were programming it on the fly. and what it ended up being was the SBA, I guess, had learned from the first round that there were some foreign corporations who do business in the United States that were applying for PPP loans and getting them initially. And they wanted to make sure the person applying, the owner of the business, was a U.S. citizen, number one. So it was really just about U.S. citizenship verification.
One more thing about identity. Notice, identity is the single number one. It moves you through automatic honoring or it cuts you off, right? So identity is always central to this, and I jump up and down about it all the time because I'm the geek. But if people, as we come to this awareness, everything they ask for is more data about, is this truly a person that we want to lend to, and who's backstopping this loan, grant, whatever it is that we want to call it, right?
Exactly. And so I made sure I filled out that
That's
information.
awesome.
Then I, of course, texted and called my inside guy and said, hey, I did all this. You want to make sure it looks good on the back end? Because, as long as I have you in my, to
Pocket.
be able to communicate with, well, let's verify it. So he verified it. Yeah, no, everything looked good. No problem. And so we kept in touch over the course of, obviously Monday the 27th, the money went in. And we were communicating maybe every other day, every third day for the following week to 10 days. And because, what I noticed in my QuickBooks account online, it said your application's been received, but the status really didn't change. Well, That's not a big surprise because they haven't really programmed this thing with a lot of experience to say,
and a lot of bells and whistles telling us, oh yeah, you're 22% through the process.
So what I learned over the course of these days from my inside man is that, first of all, the SBA sort of, even though they had this very fast pipeline and they communicated everything, the SBA was throttling the transmission of data and only taking so much at a time, and who they're taking it from. And I don't know how they do all this, but it all got communicated in. But a couple days down the road, I'm talking to him and he says, oh, no, you're approved. I mean, unless the SBA comes back and finds you have some disqualifying event in the last 10 years, you're going to be approved. And he said, in fact, this was an interesting one, Merrill, is that all the denials came back from the SBA first. So if you applied and you had a disqualifying factor in the eyes of the SBA, you got denied. That came back first, and your QuickBooks Capital tab for the loan application would have said you've been denied.
That's awesome.
So those of us that didn't have a denial after a couple days, you knew you were getting approved. It was just a matter of I don't want to call it red tape because this is electronic.
It's the processing time to actually hit every one of the. You know what's fascinating as you say that, it really does make a lot of sense, because a denial is going to come back like we just said, identity, right? Citizenship, or you're a corporation. How many we did an FBL Facebook Live a week or so ago about how many big corporations, Shake Shack and all these big, huge corporations, Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, were getting millions of dollars that didn't deserve. They were not small businesses, right? And they got approved. So those denials, it makes sense that the denials would come first, simply because they've really got their underwriting criteria down the second round compared to the first. So that's fascinating.
Yeah, I think that's it. They learned a lot from the first to the second. And then, so eventually, my guy even was using me, I think, as a beta tester for their software and their system, right? Because he said to me, hey, can you check your QuickBooks Capital tab and tell me if it looks any different? And I was like, no, it looks the same. Okay, I'll get back to you. And so, they were doing stuff. And then we did get, actually, the first notice was an email that said, you've been approved, click this button to,
Transfer
review
funds.
review the terms. You have to agree to the terms,
right?
Understand the repayment obligation, the requirements, and how you get it forgiven. We just reviewed it. I'm like, okay, what's not to love about this? I'm gonna accept that,
right?
And then it said, boom, your money will be transferred within a couple of days, and you're done. So it went through the whole process. And awesome. But what it really illuminated to me is, if you're a company that uses a payroll system other than QuickBooks Capital, and even if you did your books there, but you use a different payroll service, there's lots of payroll services out there,
right?
There would be another level of verification that would have to go through to make sure that that information is verified with QuickBooks. So to me, it was like, wow, there are a lot of companies out there that, for whatever reason, have decided they're going to do their books a certain way, that they're going to use certain systems to do it, and they've never ever considered automatic underwriting in the decisions
as the end game part, in the decisions they're making. Because QuickBooks Capital, part of the reason why you are back in the old days, a month and a half ago, when you were getting commercial loans from them, the reason why it was such an easy process is because they have all of your books. That some people get nervous, say, this is all private, I want this to be private, right? And while I don't disagree with them, when what I teach is that if you're going to play this game, you got to get into the game, man. You got to suit up, you got to get right equipment, you got to practice and train to play this funding game. And one of those is access and transparency, right? We talk about transparency for your QFE, your qualified fundable entity. They need to be able to see through to you. And what you did with QuickBooks is exactly that, right? Identity was clear, citizenship was clear, and it was a clear vista. It was straight through. They could see through your entity, see through your books to be able to fund you. To me, the rewards on being able to capitalize on capital is worth far more, especially since I'm going to give those books to the feds when I file my taxes or otherwise. I give them to investors if someone's looking to invest. I mean, they're not private documents if you want to scale and become more and more influential in your space. So brilliant.
Yeah, I agree with that, Merrill. I think, anybody in business who is, and look, you put yourself at a disadvantage if you're going to not be transparent, and maybe you're still a person of integrity and your business is completely on the up and up, on the right side of the legal line of things, and that's fine. I think clearly there are businesses out there that are not in integrity and on the right side of the legal line of things, and that makes them disqualified, really easily. So I think agree. If you don't have anything really to hide, then just be aware of the, you remember, I'm sort of here, it's kind of cliche and it's 20 years old, but I'm hearing, I'm more than 20 years old, 25 at least, I'm hearing Al Gore in my mind about the information superhighway. Remember when he called the internet that? And the reality is, that's what this all is. It's an information data superhighway for not only doing business properly as a company. It makes things easy at the end of the year when it's tax time to figure out your taxes. You don't have to try to reconstruct your books from a whole bunch of months. You've got it up to date because you should, and you need it up to date.
It's transparent between your banking accounts, everything that's coming in there. It filters all your expenses because you tagged them already.
I mean, I feel like I took a supersonic jet across, the Atlantic Ocean to the UK and got there in a couple hours rather than taking what could be a boat.
I'm telling you, there is, if funding is at the other end of this transatlantic, journey on the supersonic, then I'm all in, because there is nothing. Transparency is transparency, and everybody's going to look for and know. I used to be way more interested in what I what I called privacy, when privacy is, there's a lot of mythology around what privacy is, right? And so, and I'm not saying everybody should know everything about everything, but I am saying that if you're going to go into Wrigley Field and you're going to go up against the Cubs, you got to suit up, put on you can't bring a football, you're bringing a baseball. You got to play that game. Game. We can't stand on the sidelines or out of the park going, hey, why can't I get any money? Because you're not willing to get in and play the game that's being played. And that's what I'm all in on that. And that's what I love you being able to come back and share with me with just a whole new level. I've been saying more recently than I typically say, but I'm really enjoying being right. And I thank heavens I'm a humble and gentle, shoeshine boy. That I really dated myself there. I have no idea if anybody knows those references. But it's awesome to be able to see the validation in stress times, in recession times, when we're coming up against the more and more times where the funding target is getting smaller. But if we've already been hitting the bullseye in our fundability, we don't care about that it's shrinking. We're still fundable here in this middle. So Tom, thank you so much, man. Any other bits and pieces from his conversation, or your what you caught as a result of all this?
Really, the biggest thing that I got is that there are an awful lot of lending institutions that are not modernized as much as they need to be
they're not even playing the game.
To be efficient in this. But the reality is, we learned that the government, I assume this is, I don't know what part of the federal government, the Treasury, I guess, allocates, percentages of the total funds to different institutions. So it's not that all one bank that communicates the fastest has all the money. That's not true. We learned that. But
you have it in your pocket, and my clients are still waiting on Wells Fargo.
I know. And so there is an efficiency and there is an advantage. And I personally, as a business owner, see completely the benefits of being transparent.
Yeah.
And anything else that, you know what, I have to be honest, Merrill, I think, what was it, like 11, 12 years ago, I was of the mindset that privacy is more important than transparency.
Yeah.
I agree. I was of that mindset. And my thinking has really changed on that. And it's because of the rules of the system. And I learned a lot of this from you in your boot camp, because we did not use our residence address as the address on our driver's license, as the billing address for our personal credit cards, all stuff. And after going through your program, we had to unwind all that and change it. And now, because we didn't want to we were trying to be private about our residence. We were guarding that. But
of course,
that you can choose to do that, but it's going to come with a price.
Your thoughts, your ahas on privacy. As I said, I've come to the same conclusion. I love my privacy. I also know that I want to play this game, and I play it big, and I coach huge teams of people who all want to play it big. And so I go back to the same hard-pressed metaphor. If you're going to play this game, play it to win. That means you got to go all in. Absolutely.
Got to go in. You got to be transparent. And I highly recommend keeping all your business finances and your payroll and all that in an integrated system. It makes all of this so much easier, because I want to align myself with the software that's going to say yes now, then get kicked out into manual underwriting and have somebody take ages to make a decision. And then I get less and less or a higher rate and all this stuff. No, what's the algorithm? Let's do it.
I'm all in. Tom, as always, it's a pleasure. We have a blast. I'm so glad I love that when you text me, say, you're not going to believe this. This is awesome. I can't wait to share this with you. So I know we'll have you back, but you guys, This is Merrill Chandler, Tom Hazzard. Thank you again, Tom. The Get Fundable podcast. Binge. Get all this information. Find out as much as possible. Then go to getfundablebook.com and find out the principles. Go to getfundablebootcamp.com. Find out the strategies to start implementing, because what we're talking about here is high level stuff, and you learn it all in these platforms. So thanks again, Tom. You're a superhero, man.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Merrill. Always a pleasure.
Absolute. All right, you guys be well, and see you later, and bye.
Thank you for listening to the Get Fundable podcast. Please leave comments, because Merrill would love to read about your aha moments from this episode. And be sure to visit getfundable.com to read our blog, get important links, join our community, and much, much more, like ordering Merrill's tell-all book that is changing the world, The New F Word. And you got to tell your friends about this podcast, because we want them to get fundable too.